Joining me in the studio to discuss all of this is the author of that report, the head of cultural affairs at the IEA, Mr. Marc Glendening. Marc, a very good morning to you. Thank you very much.
And to you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to what we like to call the home of free speech. I mean, obviously...
Is this a safe space? I just want to know that,
definitely safe,
okay,
absolutely safe.
Relax.
I mean, I'd like to say you can say anything you want, but of course, that would be providing you make sure that you don't break any laws or say anything which might be in some way...
Or upset you.
You can upset me.
Okay,
no, upsetting me is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's almost impossible to upset me, as many people have found.
Well, that's what I'd like to hear.
But I seem to upset a lot of other people.
Which is marvellous. That's what society... society actually should not be a safe space for anybody.
I mean, I grew up in a household where my parents were both Scottish and they were very argumentative. And we used to sit around the dinner table and argue about all sorts of things from a very early age. So I kind of became quite good at arguing as a result of that. So my father kind of gave me this great legacy, which I'm now...
you're now monetizing.
Making a living out of, yeah, exactly. So he did me a great thing. But what we never had was any rules about what you couldn't say and what you could say. And we now find ourselves in a kind of straitjacket of rules and regulations, which are quite difficult to navigate. Tell us about your paper, first of all.
Well, my paper argues that we are now in the early stages of a transition from a liberal democratic society in which there was, until about 30 years ago, virtually total freedom of political speech. Right. We're now moving, I think, into a post-democratic society in which those with power have license to limit what views we can express, and they're using the sort of Orwellian concept of hate speech, which is the new kind of blasphemy law, to suppress not just the incitement to group violence, which was the original understanding of hate speech, but now the actual content of what we say. So can I give you a quick example?
Please.
A few weeks ago in Hebden Bridge in Yorkshire, a woman took a photograph of a transgender skeptical sticker. Somehow, and this is also very Orwellian, she was seen on CCTV. The police then turned up, a whole group of them, to her house, said, you've got this image on your phone. If you pass that image on, you will be committing a hate crime. I mean, that is extraordinary, isn't it?
And also,
in a
I
free
don't even
society?
understand following the legal argument of something like that, because surely if something has been posted publicly on a whether it's on a billboard or whether it's on a window, on the back of a car, you know, that's published it. So the fact that you've taken a picture of it and then seek to maybe publish it elsewhere, I don't understand how that is then a crime.
Yeah, well, I've put in some freedom of information requests to the West Yorkshire Constabulary. But I mean...
They're always in trouble.
Yeah, but... just going back to your point, in fact, it is becoming illegal to distribute material, which, for example, gives the Oxford English Dictionary's definition of a woman. The Thames Valley Police have said that they will charge you under the Public Order Act if you reproduce that definition in the form of a pamphlet or a sticker.
Yeah.
So that's incredibly sinister, isn't it?
It really is, because also, I don't understand why the police are getting so involved in this. I mean, we talk quite a lot to the Fair Cop group, you know, who have always been very hot on this. And when you see various different police forces putting out messages on their social media about preventing hate speech, and when you had the police in college, the College of Policing, saying that, you know, actually we're now going to investigate non-crime hate crime, where you go...
Well, that's really interesting.
I mean, you're now telling me that you're investigating something which you've already declared not to be a crime, because you wish to police the way that we speak to each other. I don't think that's got anything to do with the police.
Well, of course, but the police are now turning themselves into a sort of watered-down version of the Iranian morality police, because through this power, which you've just referred to, that is enabling them to harass people politically who have committed no crime. And I would suggest the reason for that is that every police force in this country has handed over public money to an extreme transgender ideological movement, namely Stonewall.
Right.
And so I think they have created this sinister database of non-convicted political criminals, because there are about 120,000 people on this list now, I mean, you might even be on.
Well, I
You
may
better
be.
check.
Nobody knows whether
because
they're
if
on.
you've been reported by Stonewall or some other group, the
Right.
chances are the Metropolitan Police would just automatically put you and wouldn't have to inform you.
I mean,
There's
I'm amazed
no right of appeal to this.
No, I'm amazed every day, Mark, that, you know, there isn't a huge posse of police waiting for me outside the door every time I finish
Don't worry,
the show.
there will be.
I mean, you know, unbelievable. We'll just make sure we've got cameras to film it all. But, you know, it is quite ridiculous, isn't it, that the police are actively doing this, because there must be people high up in the police organisations, whether it be Manchester or West Yorkshire or Metropolitan Police, indicating to the individual officers, this is what you must do.
Absolutely.
Because they keep telling us that they don't know, in other terms, what to do, for example. I mean, the Palestinian protest is a good case in point. They seem very reluctant to arrest anyone who's shouting jihad and calling for a holy war. In fact, they're falling over backwards to explain that jihad can mean many different things. You know, it might not mean that at all. It might just mean being a good Muslim. They're falling over backwards to make sure that people don't think that an ISIS flag that looks like an ISIS flag to the naked eye is apparently not an ISIS flag. It's an Islamic faith flag, you know, and they're not arresting people for actual crimes. They're waiting until after the event, asking people if they know who any of these people are who were committing crimes while they were being watched by the police.
Yeah, and of course, there's asymmetrical policing in this particular context as well, because the campaign against anti-Semitism, their vans were stopped by the police.
Yes.
They had vans with images of the people who'd been kidnapped,
of the costumes,
and the police intervened actively, proactively, to stop those vans going around Parliament Square. But at the same time, further up the road, there was a pro-Hamas demonstration taking place. Now, I'm a free speech fundamentalist, so I believe everybody has the equal right to say things which other people may consider obscene and offensive. Freedom of speech has to be a two-way street in democracy. So I respect the rights of the pro-Palestinian lot to say stuff I don't agree with and I consider to be obscene. But surely the campaign against anti-Semitism have the equal right to go onto the streets of London and say whatever they want to say.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the police's version of all of this is always, well, we don't want you to do it because it might cause division and it might cause a public order problem, because people are going to get so upset with you that they're going to start attacking you. So the police claim that they're doing it for your own protection. Of course. But of course they won't say that to the people who are pro-Hamas, because you can only then conclude that they are operating from a place of some political viewpoint that they've taken.
Well, they definitely are. So, I mean, the police, for example, have people from pro-transgender ideological organizations, people promoting critical race theory, which is a really sinister and itself a racist perspective, in my opinion. They have people coming in to train the police. So there's a kind of re-education program taking place within the public sector and within our schools.
And also within the NHS and within all sorts of
across
civil service departments. And,
and big business as well. I mean, we saw the Coots.
Well, I was going to say, let's bring that in as well, because how on earth did Stonewall manage to get such a foothold into our society? When did it start happening? How was it allowed? And, you know, how is it possible now that we have got an entire society sort of based around some rather vapid and bizarre rules which we've been handed down by Stonewall? I mean, nobody asked for it, nobody elected them, nobody said this is what we must do. But instead now we find that, you know, our behaviour is being prescribed by some sort of organisation which we know very little about, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, in a democracy, public sector institutions like the police have to have a self-denying ordinance. They have to be politically non-partisan. And what we're seeing now is that that mindset has completely gone. So we're getting public sector institutions now pushing a very extreme political agendas like critical race theory and transgender ideology. And so they're using their power to suppress the expression of views that some sections of the community have. Now, you're not living in a democracy if certain groups have a political privilege and other groups start with a disadvantage and the threat of maybe actual criminal prosecution.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I have loads of people contacting me and I run into them at certain things that I go to, some of whom are high profile, some of whom are not, who say, I really love listening to your show, but I can't admit to it because, you know, my sort of fellow people in my business or the fellow people that I mix with socially, would think that it was horrendous because, you know, those who don't actually know me and who don't understand what it is that we do here, which I'm very proud of and which I think is very open and willing to discuss almost anything, you know, I'm tainted as some kind of right-wing mad bigot, you know, who hates foreigners and hates, you know, anybody saying anything which is in any way left-wing. It's quite the reverse. You know, I'm very happy to have discussions and debates. For example, when you say you're a free speech fundamentalist, you know, I'm sort of slightly not quite at that point, because I'll say, for example, to you, I mean, so the argument about not shouting fire in a crowded theatre, are you saying that you would say you can shout fire in a crowded theatre?
That's a different type of speech. That's not political speech.
No.
I'm saying there should be complete, total political speech. I don't have the right to legislate for what another adult human being can say. And equally, I believe I have a natural right in a liberal society to say whatever I want to say. Shouting fire in a theatre is a different type of speech which violates the contract between the theatre owners and those paying patrons who come into the theatre with an understanding that you can't do certain types of things. So that comes down really to a question of private property. I don't have the right to go into the Labour Party headquarters or and say whatever I want to say. They have a right to exclude me from their private space. See, what we're talking about is public. The right to express views in public.
See, my version of it is that you should be able to express whatever you want, but you must also understand there might be consequences to that. So that therefore, if you do say something which turns out to be an incitement to violence, or if you do say something which turns out to be an incitement to illegal activity of some kind, then you will face the consequences of that. And so you should. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't say it. That's kind of where I am.
I mean, there are certain types of speech, for example, connected to fraud, say, which are not political. That's not political free speech. And that is connected to a physical activity which is actually a violation of somebody else's property rights. So that's a completely different category of communication. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking
but the police and others are taking those sort of speeches that may be political and turning them into things that might cause a danger to society and or the local environment. So they're using almost those kind of things that you're saying are nothing to do with political free speech and sort of superimposing political free speech over them.
And that way lies the road to sort of fascistic authoritarianism, because when the state can just arbitrarily decide what constitutes legitimate speech.
It's true.
And hate speech is an Orwellian concept. And
it really
we've got to get rid of it. The state has no right to legislate for our emotions.
Quite right. Marc, we can talk all day. We'll have to do this again because there's a lot to say. Marc Glendening there from the IEA, who's got a new paper out about free speech. It is a fascinating area, but I'm very clear on this. You say what you want, but you suffer the consequences if you say something which causes a problem in society. Now, there's an open-ended question. Coming up, we'll be taking your calls after the break, so make sure you phone us, 0344 499 1000. We'll be back after this.